everybody, what's up? It's your host Jesse Morgan and welcome to another episode of What in the Paranormal? This week we're going to be talking about three things. Bigfoot and Bigfoot allegedly killing people or aggressively going after people with harm as the perceived intent. We're going to be talking about the first documented encounter of the little green men. Beep, boop, beep, boop, beep, boop, beep, boop. And conspiracy theory. So in last week's episode, we talked about the first documented incident of an encounter with the MIB, or the Men in Black. This week I want to touch on another potential recorded first encounter. This one, however, is with what's been described as the Little Green Men. It all began many years ago on a farm in Kentucky. So this story begins back on an evening in August 21st, 1955. There was a large farm in Hopkinsville, and this is located in southwestern Kentucky. This is a really interesting story, partly because there are multiple witnesses, and they also described it as a siege or an attack at this location. So this incident occurred on a family farm, the Sutton Farm, and this is a tiny rural area of, actually it's Kelly, Kentucky, and they had a small, it was a 3-room house. This house didn't even have running water, a telephone, radio, or anything. What happened is 8 adults and 3 children arrived at the nearby Hopkinsville police station. This was around 11 o'clock at night, and according to reports, they were genuinely freaked out, scared, terror, just all over them. You know, what you have to understand is this is a very rural area. This is 1955. And, generally, these aren't people that are, going to necessarily run to the police, law enforcement right away. They're going to reach for their guns, their weapons. It's a hot Sunday evening. It's around 7 o'clock at night. And a family friend was going to grab some water from a well in the backyard. And he saw this silvery object that was very bright. It had an exhaust, but there were also all these colors of the rainbow as well, as he described it, but it was very silent, and then it just stopped right in the air and dropped straight to the ground. So at this point, he goes inside to tell them about this, and of course, they're not taking him seriously. They're kind of laughing it off, whatever. So a little bit of time goes by, about an hour, but then the dog just starts barking and will not stop. Where they go to the back door, and as they are looking out the back door, there's this glow. Allegedly in this glow, they spot this very small humanoid creature. And according to reports, it was about 3.5 feet tall, oversized head that was almost perfectly round, and its arms were freakishly long, almost extending to the ground, but its hands had talons and incredibly oversized eyes on that round head, and they glowed this yellowish kind of light. The body, they said, was this shimmery in the moon's light. It would kind of made it look like a silver metal. These two guys, they go grab their shotguns, and they got a .22 rifle, and they fired at this little humanoid creature. What they said, this is really weird. They said it put its arms up as if held at gunpoint, but it came right towards them, right towards the door. Then it did a flip, and it scrambled upright and fled into the darkness. They then stated that they saw a similar creature appear in a side window of the small house and fired through the window screen. According to them, this little man, as they're describing it, flipped and disappeared. At this point, they saw one approaching their front door. So they described this as something that looked like a 5-gallon gasoline can with a head on top and small legs. One of them steps outside. They had a small overhang, small roof, I guess you would call it. Behind him, the people that were behind him that didn't step outside saw a small claw-like hand reach down and touch his hair. Everybody screams, and he pulls back, and they shoot up at the overhang. They see another one up in a tree, similar creature in a tree, and then they said, this is crazy, they said it floated to the ground and then scurried away. So they went back inside, kind of huddled inside, waited several hours, and stated mostly occasional scratches and things like that at the roof. But basically at around 11 p.m., they all scrambled for their cars and then hightailed it to that Hopkinsville police station. They get there, and the local police chief calls for backup, and state police, also military police from nearby Fort Campbell, and a photographer from the Kentucky New Era showed up. So they found multiple casings, no other evidence though. So the police leave. However, the story doesn't end there. The creatures returned sometime between about 2:30 in the morning and dawn. And again, supposedly one that was kind of glowing and just looking through the window. One of the things that you hear about is that Bigfoot has killed people, as perceived by that person or people, is going after them to harm them, hurt them. Supposedly there's stories of Bigfoot killing people. But I got to tell you, that is highly unlikely. And those situations, even if those stories are true, there have to be other events taking place that led up to that, or very specific situations. The bulk of the stories that have been actually directly shared with me from the individuals that had those things, the easily greater percentage of those stories was either an alleged fleeting sighting, running across a road in front of them as they drove late at night, or they maybe it ran across a trail and disappeared deeper into the woods in front of them. It is extremely, extremely unlikely that Bigfoot is specifically violent for the sake of being violent towards people. The stories of actual interaction that have, again, been shared directly with me from these people that have had these encounters, that interaction has ranged from maybe small rocks or literally pebbles being thrown in their general direction, Bigfoot being spotted but observing the human or the people just as much as the people are observing the Bigfoot. There are stories of growls, but again, we don't necessarily know how to interpret those. At the end of the day, these stories of Bigfoot purposely going after a human or human's pets or anything like that to inflict harm, I frankly don't believe. Of course, there's going to be exceptions to the rule, right? Maybe Bigfoot is sick. Maybe it has young nearby. There's a story I know of, again, shared firsthand knowledge with me from this individual. They believe that this encounter, which took place in Ohio, there was an adult Bigfoot and what's typically referred to as a juvenile, a young Bigfoot. They believe, based on the circumstances surrounding the situation they were in, that the adult Bigfoot actually caused a distraction to pull the attention away from where the juvenile or young Bigfoot was. So again, this is even despite having, young nearby, the adult didn't go after it. Actually showed an incredible form of intelligence by creating a distraction to pull the attention away from where that juvenile Bigfoot was. I'd love to get your thoughts and input on it. This is just a topic that floats around the Bigfoot community, and I know there are a lot of stories out there. Let me hear your thoughts. Go ahead and leave a message in the comments. The next thing I want to talk a little bit about to share with everyone is the idea of a conspiracy theory. The idea of conspiracy theory is something that's often put on unsubstantiated ideas or situations, I'll say. But the question is, if you call something a conspiracy theory, does it actually discredit it? Also, does labeling something a conspiracy theory do little to stop people from believing it? There was a study that was done on 170 U.S. adults, and basically exploring that concept of, if you label a statement an idea or a conspiracy theory, did that make any difference to the participants' attitudes towards it? The results were exceptionally clear in this study that it made no difference whatever label was used, to how seriously the statement was taken, or to the participants' ideas about how controversial or believable it was. The findings from this study do actually support, and they build upon or extend previous work that suggests when calling an idea a conspiracy theory doesn't actually reduce the endorsement of it. And that is actually incredibly important, because that suggests that people's belief that the label has the power to discredit these narratives may be misplaced. After they did that study, they also ran a second study on 199 students. They read a list of statements and rated to the extent to which they would call each one a conspiracy theory, and also their own level of agreement with the statement. This study showed that the less participants believed the statement to be true, the more likely they were to call them a conspiracy theory. It's possible that that is evidence that pre-existing disbelief does lead to the use of the term conspiracy theory. If you remember, there was that mysterious disappearance of that Malaysian flight, MH370, and there were all kinds of theories, conspiracy theories, on what in the world happened to this plane, right? And they put out a couple that it was hijacked by North Korea, and this was a fact that was known but suppressed by the Malaysian government, for example. And what's interesting is that they rated the less plausible statements as more likely to be a conspiracy theory, more likely, of course, to call those people that believe that conspiracy theorists. Here's kind of the summation of all that, okay? This is where it leads us to. What it distills down to is that the label conspiracy theory is likely to be a consequence rather than a cause of disbelief in conspiracy narratives. So don't just buy into something immediately. It should be appropriate, and it should be important to ask questions. That doesn't mean you have to try and intentionally disrespect a person. And with that, folks, that's another episode. I greatly appreciate your time with me, Jesse Morgan, your host of What in the Paranormal.